So I was going to wait until after the Monday Night Football game to do my Week 5 recap, but after Patriots-Broncos got moved and the last two games on the schedule aren't really anything that's that relevant, have to get into it. So that was a rough weekend. And it was already bad enough with the Yankees losing to the Rays the way they did. And honestly, it just got worse today. In terms of just my rooting interests from like a Giants perspective and Survivor League stuff, and it was just not great. So, Giants-Cowboys. And first off, I wish Dak Prescott well. That was one of the most gruesome injuries I've seen. I feel bad for the guy. You know, he never got his payday, and we'll see what the future holds for him. I wish him a speedy recovery. He seems like a really good guy, even though, you know, obviously he's on the Cowboys. You know, in a situation like this, that doesn't matter. You know, so just one of those freak plays where he just kind of twisted his ankle, and it was just gross. So that's first things first. But in terms of the game itself, this was such a winnable game for the Giants. And they just couldn't find a way to get the win. And there was so many situations where if just something had happened differently, whether that be touchdowns taken off the board, the officiating to me was questionable in this game. And it's funny, there's like a stigma of like Dallas Cowboys getting some home cooking in Jerry World. And I hate to complain about officiating, and I think the Giants deserve blame for just not getting the job done at the end of the day. But, you know, the fake field goal touchdown to Evan Ingram, where they said it was a legal shift, that seemed to be iffy. And then the Darius Slayton touchdown that was taken back by a Damian Ratley kind of pick play, just tough that both of them were taken, you know, back. You know, I think you can make arguments for both, for and against those being penalties. The one really egregious bad call was the non-hold call. B.J. Hill easily was held. And this was the play where Dalton rolls out and finds, I think it was CeeDee Lamb. I know the deep play was to Gallup. It was the first sideline play. It may have been to Gallup, but either way, that was a definite missed call. But with it all being said, the Giants got off to a really good start. 17-3 after the first quarter. They were running the ball pretty effectively. Kyler Fackrell had a really nice interception return for a touchdown. Things were looking good, and all of a sudden, the second quarter, it kind of all went away. You know, Cowboys had an easy touchdown where they drive the field, and then Daniel Jones. It happens at least once a game, and they're usually critical. So he gets sacked, he fumbles it, and the Cowboys return it for a touchdown. He has to clean that up. I say it every week, but it never changes. And so while you continue to see why this guy was drafted where he was, there's just no excuse for these mistakes. It's killing them. It really is. But the Giants stayed in it. They did. But, you know, when Dak goes down, you'd like to get that victory. And there was, you know, a big 15-yard face mask penalty on Marcus Golden when the Giants were up 34-31. And, you know, Zeke only ran for maybe like a yard or two. And, you know, so it could have been 2nd and 9 there. Yeah, and the Giants, like, I like there's ingenuity to some of the things they're doing. Like I mentioned before with that fake field goal, you know, Riley Dixon, the holder and punter, gets it. You know, Evan Ingram pretended like he was going to go off the field. He didn't. And there was a lot of, it was a Belichick type move. And I was wondering, like, Joe Judge is a special teams guy. Like, when are we going to start to see some different stuff? And we saw it there. And then on the 2-point conversion, Andrew Thomas was eligible. Jones rolls out to the right, and then he finds Thomas wide open on the left side. So they're, you know, even though they're 0-5, they're definitely showing that they're a competitive football club, but it doesn't matter. 0-5 is 0-5. So you can say all you want, but I've been saying, again, I sound like a broken record, but you have to get it done at some point. So now they go into next week against Washington. And as a fan, it's for the first time this year, I'm on the fence. I don't think in terms of whether I want them to win or want them to lose. It's tough. only, I mean, because the division is still in reach, as sad as that is at 0-5, but at the same time, like I know realistically that they're just not gonna, do that, right? I mean, even with an injured Dak, like there's still the Eagles, even with Andy Dalton, the Cowboys, the Cowboys are 2-3, so on the fence. I guess I'll see how I feel when the game starts. And another thing that really bothered me was I've seen it over and over again with this team over the years where the Giants, they have the ball tied with 2 minutes to go. And for most teams, at worst, you're going to overtime. But with the Giants, I always have this fear, watch, we're going to lose in regulation. And what do you know? That's exactly what happened. So they made a key completion to Darius Slayton, who had a really good game on the sideline. Give him a first down with about a minute and 30, a minute and 40 to go. The first down play was a little screen pass to Dion Lewis that lost a yard, but the clock's ticking. Like, it's not an ideal play, but it could be worse. But what really killed them was the next play was a throw to Dion Lewis towards the sidelines, and he went out of bounds. He kind of got pushed out. I don't know if it was intentional, but that stopped the clock. And that really hurt them. And then they threw an incomplete pass. So basically no time went off the clock, and then Dallas pulls off some crazy plays, gets the win. Just, man, those games in Dallas have just become a house of horrors. So that one really, there was just a number of plays that really stung. I think I mentioned most of them, but yeah, it's tough being a Giant fan. Really is. I guess it could be worse being a Jet fan, probably. Although for them, like, as bad as things are, they probably are almost definitely looking at the number one pick. I mean, like, obviously the Giants are 0-5 as well, but I think there's a good chance the Jets, like, should get that number one pick, clean house a bit. And so as bad as they are and as tough as it is to watch those games, good things may be on the horizon. But for the Giants, I think, obviously with this Washington game coming up, if they lose it, you can basically forget about everything. If they win, you're 1-5 with a win home against Washington. It's really nothing too crazy, but at that point, then they'd play at the Eagles next week. So I could see, that's why I'm kind of on the fence about what I want in terms of win-loss. But yeah, it's Giant football. So some other crazy games. One that just ended before the Sunday night game, and I was rooting for the Vikings due to Survivor League reasons. I have like 4 sheets. Seattle almost made the cut but didn't, and like it's one of those things like where if I'm in a group, like if we took Seattle, they definitely would have lost. But because we didn't take them, they won. And this is even more heartbreaking if you're a Viking fan, where there were so many situations where the game could have ended, but it didn't. So Zimmer goes for it on 4th and inches. Late in the game, it's a 6-point game, and it's a 5-point game. And if he gets the first, the game is in effect over. If not, obviously you run the risk of them coming down and scoring a touchdown. I didn't hate the call to go for it. I didn't like the play call, though. Just go for the QB sneak. I mean, it's rare that you see QB sneaks not work. But they did kind of a slow developing play to Alex Madison, not Dalvin Cook, who was hurt. And they ended up short. So, and then Russell Wilson found his way to get it done. There was a 4th and 10 where he just kind of lobs it up to DK Metcalf on the, left sideline, and the cornerback Dantzler on the Vikings just had no idea where it was. He lost it, and Metcalf makes the catch. And then at the end of the game, 4th and goal at the 6, and he finds Metcalf. You just knew that the Steelers were going to find a way to get it done, and the Vikings weren't. That's just kind of how these franchises are, with Russell Wilson on one side, Cousins on the other. A lot of questionable decisions for the Vikings. I personally, when they got their touchdown to give them at that point a 4-point lead, I would have went for 2 to give them a 6-point lead. Now, obviously, you couldn't have anticipated Russell Wilson then throwing an interception, but it's too bad. Maybe if you go for 2 and you get it, you're up 6, and then at the end of the game, you just kick the field goal and go up 9 and you win the game. But I understand that it wasn't an easy decision. I could see going either way, but that was unfortunate. They had an earlier 2-point conversion that they didn't convert. And at that time, I kind of felt like it was a little bit too early to go for it. Again, we're not going to get like into the weeds of the Minnesota Vikings here, but really a pretty remarkable win for the Seahawks when you consider the fact, like, percentage-wise, right? They probably only had like at its worst, like less than a 5% chance of winning. But that's what Russell Wilson does. Big upset with the Chiefs Raiders. I did not expect that. I know it's a divisional game, but I just figured that Mahomes and company would find a way to win, and it just didn't happen. Give the Raiders credit. They've come up with some pretty good wins this season. As it's turning out, winning at Carolina week 1 was a decent win. Week 2, home against the Saints, good win. You lose to a tough Patriot team, you lose to a tough Bill team, and then you go into Kansas City and win. So maybe the Raiders are for real. I still have my doubts, but they look pretty fucking good. And it wasn't Mahomes' fault at all. The Chiefs' defense just got obliterated. No pass rush at all. I don't know what happened. It was a defense that had actually been looking pretty good up until this point. But they had no prayer. Carr had all day to throw. It seemed like they were getting beat on the ground a lot. They were just like tiring out. You just figured it would get better, and it never did. It just got worse for their defense. And the Chiefs' offense kind of stalled a bit, like for a good stretch that second half. They kind of got going at the very end, but it was too late. But for the Chiefs, it's not a huge loss, right? Like they're still in good shape. So you kind of have to factor that in too in terms of motivation for some of these teams. Like obviously it's all there, but you find that some of these teams that are more at 500 or below, they're bigger games. And teams that are undefeated on top of the standings, it's just a little bit less. So that was definitely an unexpected result. Chiefs were a really big favorite. Going back to the Giants, just in terms of the NFC East, it's again a situation where the Eagles lose and Washington loses. Neither being too much of a surprise. The Eagles-Steelers game was a good game. The Steelers, it felt like they were choking it away, and the Eagles couldn't get it done. Peterson with an interesting decision. They went for a 57-yard field goal with Jake Elliott, down by 2, with about 3 minutes to go or so. Like maybe you could have went for it. Maybe you could have even punted. It was a bit of a curious decision because even if he makes the field goal, the Steelers still had plenty of time just down by 1. So, but it's funny. Like Jake Elliott, famously made like a 63-yard field goal to beat the Giants a few years ago, but of course now he misses. Which also reminds me, props to Graham Gano. Graham Gano, I believe, had 3 field goals of over 50 yards. So major improvement overall, Jack Rosas, so props to him. But a player that really emerged in this Pittsburgh game was Chase Claypool, rookie. It just seems like the Steelers, they always find a way to find new receivers. Like Juju Smith-Schuster kind of regresses a little bit, but now you have a young Deontay Johnson who did get hurt today. And now Chase Claypool. And that's also credit to Ben Roethlisberger. This guy just continues to defy... I don't even know how to describe it. He, with the injuries and the wear and tear, but this guy's still a very effective quarterback in this league. And it definitely seems like he definitely has... he's got some years left if he wants to stick around. Which I guess, reminds me of... another 2004 draftee, Phillip Rivers. A bit of a rough day at Cleveland. And Cleveland's playing good football. That's going to be a good matchup next week. Browns are at the Steelers. And Browns are 4-1. And they can run the ball. They're playing good defense. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a year where the Browns maybe make the playoffs. But this is, at Pittsburgh, that'll be a good test. If they win that game, then I'm convinced. But based on the past, you'd think that Pittsburgh will kind of find a way to win that game. But Pittsburgh showed holes. They really did. It would not shock me if the Browns went in there and won that game. Baltimore easily beats the Bengals. It's kind of what I thought the Chiefs would do to the Raiders. I think there's more of a discrepancy between the Ravens and the Bengals than the Chiefs and the Raiders, but it just didn't happen. But, Baltimore's defense has been very good, other than, a rough go against Mahomes, which is understandable. The Ravens' defense has been really, really solid. Texans finally get a win today. And you kind of feel like when there's a firing, like Bill O'Brien gets fired, it does seem to rejuvenate the team, which is why, like, if Adam Gase got fired, I think if you're a Jet fan and you want that top pick, I think if you want that top pick, you don't want Adam Gase to be fired. As frustrating as it may be, if I'm a Jet fan, I would probably just want him to stay. So it was, a re-energized Houston team. They played, really solid defensive game. Maybe Romeo Crennel, who's a defensive guru, now the head coach. Maybe J.J. Watt and some of the other guys were more inspired. It seemed like there was a lot of toxicity amongst the club. So Texans get their first win. The Falcons still did not get their first win. And finally tonight, Dan Quinn gets the boot. It had been a long time coming, and it finally happened. And it should have. There's no reason why he should have been the head coach of that team, as early as the start of this year. I think the fact that he had reached the Super Bowl a few years back, I think that, even though they lost in a very kind of embarrassing way, blowing that lead, I think that definitely helped him keep that job. And it's going to be a change of the guard at some point there. Matt Ryan, it's just not the same. Julio's getting a little bit older, getting a little bit more banged up. So I don't be surprised within the next year or two where that core is kind of gutted a bit. So Atlanta and the New York teams are the only winless football teams. And, the undefeated teams are dwindling down as well. The Seahawks did hold on tonight to stay undefeated. The Steelers are as well. The Packers are. The Bills and Titans are. And one of those, there may be one other that I'm forgetting, but it might just be those five. But yeah, Bills, Titans, one of those will lose, assuming they play on Tuesday night. That should be an interesting game, although Tennessee is really banged up. So, in terms of COVID, they have a lot of guys that aren't going to be healthy enough to play. So you kind of have to think the Bills would have the advantage there, but I guess you never know. Another shocker was just the way the Niners got demolished by Miami. And Miami's a team that I've been saying, they're playing good football. Brian Flores is a good coach. They play very hard. I don't see them as a very talented team, but they play very hard under him. And they play the Jets this week, so they could be looking at being 3-3. The Niners, their 2 wins were against the Giants and the Jets. They lost at home in 3 games. The Cardinals, the Eagles, and the Dolphins. And those teams are not great. So we might be looking at a situation where the Niners, they did, lose a ton of guys in that Jets game. But with that being said, this shouldn't be happening. It really shouldn't be. And I think it also speaks to the dysfunction of the New York teams that they got so dominated against them. But in that strong NFC West, it's not a stretch to say that the Niners might be the worst team in that division. So you go from the Super Bowl, team, Super Bowl runner-up, to now being, fair to say, maybe the worst team in that division. And it speaks to the strength of it more than anything. But, Jimmy Garoppolo, he might not be the long-term answer. They're going to need to evaluate that. You could tell that they want to stick with him, and it wouldn't shock me if he turned things around, but I think it's also fair to say that, look, it's not like he's so young. He, in terms of, game reps and stuff like that, he's not, he hasn't played that much, but he was the Patriots' backup for a few years. So he, if they want to go in another direction, I wouldn't be all that shocked. That's a team that's predicated on just running the football well. But when they're down and they need to throw, that can be a problem. That can be definitely a problem for them. And today, I just figured at some point they'd make it close. Never happened. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he continues to play good football. He was a journeyman, and I guess he still is a journeyman, right? He's been on a million teams, but he plays well. He can run. Sometimes he makes the bad mistake, the bad interception, but still, let's put it this way. There's definitely 7 or 8 starting quarterbacks in this league that are worse than him. I think it's fair to say that. So the 2 will watch. I think that's definitely put on hold for now. Looking ahead, I guess Monday Night Football, Saints and the Chargers. That should be interesting. Michael Thomas is going to be out. Apparently, there was some undisciplinary reasons. He might have gotten into an altercation with a teammate, but he's also banged up too. So I guess combination of those 2 things, and he was ruled out. Still trying to kind of gain more information as far as what happened there. But I would expect a shootout. The Chargers are a bit of a weird team. And I guess the Saints are too. So, if I had to predict, I'd say New Orleans wins. I got the Superdome. But I would expect to see points. The Saints defense has not been impressive at all. Neither is the Chargers defense due to injury. Both teams due to injuries, to be honest. Justin Herbert has looked strong, and it should be a fun game for sure. And then, like I briefly mentioned, Tuesday, Bills-Titans, under weird circumstances, two undefeated teams, but I think the Bills have looked stronger than Tennessee has. And Tennessee did not play last week. So for the scheduling of the NFL, you hope that they can get this game in. If they have to push this game back, it's really going to make things dicey to the point where they may have to add a week 18, which I think they want to avoid, but it may just be inevitable. They've already switch things around. So, we'll see Broncos versus the Patriots next weekend. And yeah, so really rough. I mean, just to recap in terms of the Giants, very frustrating because if you had won this game, you'd be 1-4, being 1-0 in the division with a win at Dallas. The Redskins would, I keep on saying the Redskins. Washington football team would be 1-4. The Eagles would be 1-3-1, and the Cowboys would have been 1-4. So you really would have been, as wild as it seems, right in the thick of that NFC East. But now you lose this game, you sit alone at 0-5. You have a couple division games coming up, so that's kind of the only reason why I would maybe considering just wanting them to win this weekend. But again, if Washington beats them, I certainly won't be complaining. I want Dave Gettleman out of here as soon as possible. If that's going to help it, then great. But the running game has gotten better. With no Saquon Barkley, it seems like Devontae Freeman has, while he doesn't have the flashiness that Saquon has, you like the ability that he's not afraid to kind of just go right in there and get the tough yards, the third and shorts, the goal line plays. I like that. Whereas with Saquon, for all his ability, he wasn't great in short yardage situations. I think that was kind of known about him going into his NFL career. So, yeah, it was tough. I was not happy about the Chiefs versus the Raiders because we picked two Chiefs in the Survivor League. Was not happy with the Giants Cowboys, even though we actually took one Cowboys. That'd be the one that we would have been kind of fine sacrificing, and then Seahawks winning. So, yeah, football's fucked up. Especially, when it comes to the gambling aspect of it with fantasy. It's just none of it makes sense. It's great. It's great when you're on top, but, you kind of want to have nothing to do with it when they lose. And then I watched, the Rays-Astros tonight, which I just have no fucking interest in. So, yeah, 2020 for you. But we'll see what happens. It'll be an interesting week 6. We'll definitely get back into that. And, yeah, go New York, 0-10.